Tuesday Talks. We're just gonna start in just a minute here. All right, so I see that it's 7:30 in Korea time. So welcome everybody. This is our first Korea-facing Tuesday Talks. We're very excited. Thank you for joining us. Every Tuesday, we'll be having informative discussions with admissions officers from the US, from great institutions. My name is Jung Rock, and I am with Initial View, and I'm here joined today with 4 wonderful colleagues from Bowdoin, Grinnell College, Haverford College, and Occidental College. Today's talk will be conducted in English, but there is Korean translation on each of our slides. And also there'll be live translations that will be provided in the Zoom chat box. So you can use a Q&A chat box, which should be at the bottom of your screen, to ask your questions throughout the presentation. So please feel free to ask your questions anytime. 안녕하세요. Tuesday Talks에 오신 것을 환영합니다. 저는 Initial View 대표하는 김정록입니다. 이 프레젠테이션은 이제 영어로 할 거고요. 그런데 이제 PPT 슬라이드는 모두 다 이제 다 한국어로 이제 번역되어 있습니다. 아래에 있는 채트박스 보시면 한국어로 이제 요약하면서 그때그때 번역을 하면서 올리겠습니다. 그리고 이제 우리 사정관들에게 물어볼 거 있으시면 언제든지 Q&A 박스 보시면 거기에다가 Q&A 박스로 이제 올리세요. 그러면 우리가 그때 이제 영어로 번역해서 사정관들에게 드리겠습니다. 유튜브에 오신 분들도 환영하고요. 유튜브에서도 언제든지 그 채트 박스에다가 문의할 거 물어보세요. Also, welcome to everyone who is on YouTube. We are doing this live for the first time on YouTube, so hopefully it's going smoothly on that end. And you can also use a chat box on YouTube too, and we'll make sure that those questions are then forwarded to our admissions offices. This is certainly a very strange time for everyone. I know for all of you students, studying from home is not easy, and also for you parents, handling that is not easy. We do not, these are unsettling times, and we do not necessarily have all the answers. But I can attest, however, that our 4 admissions officers that are here today are dedicated to working for you, and they are here to provide some great information. So on that note, I just want to let everyone know that this is not your normal info session in the sense that our admissions officers will take more time to just explain the liberal arts college experience as a whole and their shared characteristics, rather than spend the entire time to talk about their specific colleges. So without further ado, I'll let our admissions officers introduce themselves. So starting off with Tina from Grinnell College.
Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for spending some time with us today. My name is Tina Elfenbein, and I'm an admission officer with Grinnell College, which is in Grinnell, Iowa. Can we move to the next slide, please? And so what I wanted to share just a little bit about Grinnell. So you see some important facts about our community on the screen there. And then the next slide, the most important thing I think to know about Grinnell, the thing that we consider most distinctive about our college and our approach to education is we have what we call an individually advised curriculum. This means that outside of the requirements of the major, Grinnell doesn't impose any additional requirements on our students. So we have a very open and flexible curriculum, and our students work really closely with their faculty advisor as they create and design a program over 4 years above and beyond their major that works really well for their own interests and their own goals. Thanks again to Initial View for hosting. I'm really happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle. I'm here representing Occidental College in Los Angeles. You can see some quick stats and important facts about the college here. So if you're familiar with Los Angeles, we're in Northeast LA between Pasadena and Glendale. We're about 13 kilometers away from downtown Los Angeles. But if we go to the next slide, I wanted to talk about a few distinctive features of the college. So we are the only liberal arts college in Los Angeles, and certainly if you are interested in maybe the personalized experience, and we'll certainly explain to you what a liberal arts college and education is about. But if you're interested in kind of that curriculum with a backdrop of a large city, Oxy might be a great place to look. And we call ourselves Oxy for short. All of our seniors are required to submit a senior thesis, a senior comprehensive project to show mastery and kind of what they've learned during their 4 years of education. And one kind of fun thing is that one of our largest student traditions is called dance production. About 10% of our students do participate in it. It's a completely student run, student performed, student choreographed dance show that happens in the spring. And most of the students who participate don't have any dance experience, so certainly that might be something to look forward to as well. But I'll go ahead and pass this to the next AO.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kathleen Abels. I'm here representing Haverford College. Haverford is located right outside of the city of Philadelphia, about 10 kilometers from Center City or downtown Philadelphia. Our campus, as you can see in my virtual image behind me, is beautiful. And we're part of a larger consortium as well. So we think a lot about our location and how that informs the resources of our students. Our students are able to take classes, of course, at Haverford, but also at Bryn Mawr College, Swarthmore College, and the University of Pennsylvania. So students have 5,000 classes to choose from and will take 32 to graduate. We also, like Occidental, guarantee undergraduate research. Every one of our students has a senior thesis, and we think that's really important in allowing them to become experts in their field and really scholars in their own right. And along those lines of student voice, Haverford also has one of the oldest and one of the only entirely student-run honor codes in the United States. It's both social and academic in nature, and it affords our students a great deal of freedom as well. So thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we're really excited to get going, and I'll pass it to my friend and colleague, Ryan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to have this time together. My name is Ryan Ricciardi. I am one of the admissions officers at Bowdoin College, which is in Brunswick, Maine. Brunswick, Maine is, of course, a booming metropolis that you've all heard of, so we don't need to spend time on that. I'm kidding. Brunswick is a small town. It is about 25 minutes north of Portland, which is Maine's largest city. It's about 2 hours north of Boston. There are international airports in both cities. You can fly into either one and be on our campus pretty easily. Being in Maine really informs our identity. We are, if you want to just switch to the next slide, we have attained carbon neutrality. So thinking about our footprint and our footprint on the world around us, and thinking about the impact that we're having on the physical world around us is a big part of who we are. That sort of plays into our commitment to the common good. So we are an institution that was endowed and founded for the common good. So we were founded in 1794, and since then, our principle around education is that it is intended to be used to make the world better, however you choose to define that, right? So our students can major in anything from economics and going into finance to biology, going into medicine, et cetera, but they're all thinking about how they use their major to really leave the world better than they found it. And then one of the last things I'll say about Bowdoin is that it is a place that really believes in the value of taking intellectual risks. So it is not a place that is meant to be safe in the classroom, right? It's a place where you're going to be challenged and where you're going to challenge others to think differently and see the world in a really different place. And on that note, in terms of thinking about the world and seeing the world in a different way, I think one of the amazing parts about this really unsettling time that we're in now is that we get to see these common values that are rising up around the world. Things like empathy and bravery and courage and connection to each other. And so those are some of the values that you'll hear today as we go through our presentation. But our presentation today isn't specifically about our individual schools. We spent a little bit of time just introducing them, but really we're here to talk about the value of being a part of a liberal arts college community and what that means in terms of your education and your connection to people around you. We sort of randomly divided up this presentation into these sections, but each of these sections can apply to all 4 of our colleges, right? So you'll hear me talk about the start of that process, which is applications. So the first thing that you're going to do as you think about colleges is apply to them. And one of the really important things to know, if we want to just go to the next slide, one of the really important things to know about our schools is that we do not practice threshold admissions, right? There isn't a test score that you can achieve that automatically gets you into our schools. And in fact, we all deny perfect testing every single year. So it's really important to know that what we're doing is looking at the whole of you, right? It's called holistic review. And it means that we are really spending time looking at every word that you write in your application, because we want to know every single piece of information that you've chosen to share with us. You spent a lot of time on your application sort of deciding the best version of yourself to share with us. And we want to spend that time valuing your work and really getting to know who you are. So there are a couple of factors that we really pay attention to as we go through, right? And the first and foremost is academics. We want to make sure that we're putting everyone in a position to succeed. And that's a good thing, right? We're always looking out for your best interests as we go through all of our work. And so one of the things that we pay the most attention to as we go through your academic review is your transcript. And we know that these will look different. They look different from school to school across the United States, and they're going to look different from country to country and within different countries in terms of what we are seeing and the opportunities that you have in front of you. So one of the most important things to know is that we don't expect you to have 29 AP classes on your transcript when you apply to us, right? That would be nearly impossible. And some of you aren't in schools that offer an AP curriculum. So we're not expecting you to go beyond your curriculum to take opportunities and show us, you know, the American way. That's not what this is about. It's about seeing how you've taken advantage of the opportunities that you've had in front of you. So if you're in an AP school, yeah, we probably want to see that you've challenged yourself, right? It doesn't mean that you have to take every AP class. If you're in an IB school, we want to see that you've taken some IB classes, and maybe you're in an IB diploma program, but maybe you're not, and that's okay too. What we want to see is how you take advantage of what your school has to offer. You do not have to go cram in an extra 9 AP classes just to prove to us that you can do more, right? We want to see who you are as a person, and that's your academics, but there's so much more to you than that. One of the things that's important in sort of also thinking about your academics are your recommendations, and we read those, and those offer us a connection to your school, right? So our connection as admissions officers is to your counselor at your school. And that's one of the things to really think about too. Your counselors are there to give you really good advice about how to apply to schools. And you don't need to reach out to agents to do that. We're looking at authenticity, right? And we have a connection with your school and with your counselors. And we want to hear your authentic voice throughout the application. And we're expecting that this is your work that we're reading throughout the application. So you don't need to pay tens of thousands of dollars to an agent to have your application written. We want that voice to be yours. And one of the ways that we get access to that voice is through your essay. And that essay is really insight into who you are and what you're passionate about and what you want to share with us. So I'm thinking of an example of an essay from one of the Korean students who applied to Bowdoin this year. And he wrote about the stigma of growing up in a single parent household. And that was a really fascinating thing for me to read and to know about him. It gave me insight into sort of his view on growing up in Korea, but it also gave me insight into how he thought about going forward with that, right? So he started working with organizations to reduce stigma around being part of a single parent household. And so it was this insight into his view on being Korean and his view on what he was doing to be a little bit brave, right? And to show empathy to those in his position and to sort of give information to people about why this needed to be destigmatized. And that voice really came through in his essay. There's also an opportunity in your application to have a voice through your interview, right? All of us really highly encourage students to have interviews. It doesn't matter to us how you have that. If you're able to come to campus, if hopefully we're all open and people can come to campus, you can have an interview on campus. You can have an interview off campus when we're traveling or with an alum. You can have an interview through Initial View, right? The platform that we're all sharing it right now. And it's a really wonderful way to add more of your voice to your application. We literally get to see you in this process and we get to hear you talk about the things that matter to you. So this same student who wrote about the stigma of growing up in a single parent household, he talked about in his interview, which was an Initial View interview. So he talked about how happy he was watching his debate team grow. So he actually gave up a spot for a tournament to students who were less experienced than he was, so that they could gain the experience that he had. He said, I watched people do this for me and I was happy to do it for somebody else. And I watched those people who took my spot find their passion for debate. And that also gave me a lot of insight into who he would be on campus, right? This is about learning more about you. It's not about you telling us what you think we want to hear, because what we want to hear is more about you. And so that authenticity and that connection to people and showing that empathy and growth, that's all a really big part of thinking about who you are at this moment, but also the potential of who you're going to be 4 years from now after time on our campus. One of the things that you haven't heard me talk a whole lot about is testing. It can be really scary to think right now about all of those test dates that have been canceled and all of the ones that are canceled in the future and what that means. And I think one of the important things to know is that we get that, right? And for that reason, you'll see a lot of schools now are going test optional. And that's a really wonderful thing for you. It means that people on our end are really paying attention to what it means to be a person thinking about testing now with a lack of opportunity, right? So we're really thinking about the best way to look at your application. But really, even when your testing is there, it is the least interesting piece of information that we have about you. Bowdoin, it was actually the school that was the first test optional school in the country. We've been test optional since 1969. So I can tell you with full confidence that while it is a piece of information that we have about you, if you submit it, it is never how I would ever go up and introduce myself, right? I've never gone to anyone and said, hi, I'm 1550. No, that number does not define who I am in life, and it does not define who you are in this process. And as I said in the beginning, it's not the thing that's going to get you into any of the schools here. And so the meaning of being test optional is about thinking about you beyond that number. So whether or not you submit your testing, know that we have the full capacity to understand your academic ability, your potential, and your contribution to our communities as you go forward as a student. So these ideas of courage and bravery and empathy and connection to each other, they are a big part of the application process, even as it seems very distant, right? Very separate, that you're filling something out and sending it out into the ether and someone else on the other end is picking it up. And that's just not true. All of these values come through in how you present yourself and what's important to you. And they come through in how we get to read what you've chosen to share with us. But there are also values that continue throughout your time at college. And so I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Tina from Grinnell, and she's going to talk to you about what your first couple of years at a liberal arts college might look like.
Thanks so much, Ryan. And thanks so much for doing a beautiful job really explaining what all of our institutions care about in the application process, because what we care about when we review a file says a lot about what we care about in terms of the sort of education that we offer and the type of students that we want to bring to our campuses. And so Ryan spoke so much about courage and empathy and the ways that each individual student contributes to our communities. And that matters because our communities are small and because we consider the residential aspect of our colleges just as important to your education as the academic. So what you learn in the classroom will be great and profound, but what you learn as members of our campuses and also of our wider communities will matter a lot to what you learn and what you're able to take away from your time at a liberal arts college. That really begins your first 2 years with the way that you explore, right? So a liberal arts education really is about two particular things. So we want you to get breadth. We want you to learn widely across our curriculum, right? But we also want you to get great depth in your area of expertise, which will be your major. And I know Kat had mentioned the importance of research at Haverford and at Oxy, but that's true at Grinnell and Bowdoin as well, and at all liberal arts colleges. So we do want you to graduate feeling really like an expert in your own field, but also to have tried and have taken risks and tried different classes across the curriculum. All of our institutions choose to encourage that breadth and depth in different ways. So Grinnell, as I mentioned earlier, is a school that has an open curriculum. We think that students explore widely if they choose what they want to take, that will give them the breadth that we want. But other institutions feel very strongly that a core curriculum, having classes that are required to take across different disciplines, but another huge part of our approach to education is this idea that we want our students to participate and engage fully, both inside the classroom and outside of the classroom. And that really begins for many of our students with orientation and pre-orientation programs. So as a first year, the ways that you participate in our community even before classes have started. For our international students, this often involves a pre-orientation program. And this is really important because it's how you learn to be a member of the campus community, but also often how you learn about opportunities to learn and to be a part of the community off our campus as well. And I think about a student that we've got, she's a second year at Grinnell, she's just finishing up her second year. She's a native of Seoul, but also considers Seattle home. And Shirley has, in the 2 years that she's been at Grinnell, become really involved in the wider Grinnell community, particularly doing a lot of volunteer work with our elementary and middle school students. She's also become the president of our Korean Student Association. And I name these things because for us, the way that Shirley has chosen to become a member of our community, to participate in the life of this place, of Grinnell College in Grinnell, Iowa, is part of what we want her to learn while she's here. And it's those qualities of leadership and engagement that Ryan mentioned when thinking about an application that really bear fruit when a student is on our campus. But another way, the more academic way that in your first and second year, our colleges really encourage participation, engagement, learning how to be an excellent communicator is in a class that we require of our first year students. So Grinnell calls it a first year tutorial. It's the only class required outside of the major. Other schools call it a first year seminar maybe. And it's a class that is intentionally very, very small, right? So it might be just a handful of students, 10 students, 12 students. And in this first year class, you're going to learn how to be a liberal arts college student. So it's a seminar style class. It's going to be a lot about your classroom participation. It's very writing intensive. And it very often creates a relationship of closeness with your professor who teaches that class. At Grinnell, the professor who teaches your first year tutorial is your first academic advisor who helps you begin to build and design your curriculum. But all of our institutions, that professor who teaches that class gets to know you early on in your college career and can really help shape and guide all of the opportunities that you encounter over your first 2 years and beyond. that first year class is often a way that our students also learn all of the support resources on our campus, right? So certainly your professor, but also the research librarians, the people in the writing lab and the reading lab. At Grinnell, that first year class is connected to a staff person in the Center for Careers, Life and Service, because we want our first and second year students at all of our institutions to feel comfortable seeking help and guides in how you think about what you might want to do over the summer or after you graduate, right? So again, Shirley's really committed to the work that she does in our community, but over the summer, she went home to Seoul to take a research internship because eventually her plan is to go on to medical school. And so she did research with the tissues of mice. I didn't fully understand it, but I know it was important to her. And I think about all of the different ways we want you to spend your first 2 years sort of exploring all of your options so you can make a good choice about what you end up majoring in, and also really learn how to be an active and full member of our community. And that means, again, what you do outside of the classroom. We are residential campuses. We do really believe that how you live here impacts how you learn here. And so it's in the classroom, but it's also outside of the classroom. And the work that you do over the first 2 years, exploring, sort of taking risks, being brave, really influences what you were able to do in the second half of your college career, which Michelle from Oxy is going to talk to you about now.
Hi, everyone. And I just want to reiterate, I know we've said this a few different times, but all of the examples that or the example that I'll talk about, it's something that you'll see across liberal arts college campuses, across our 4 campuses, certainly. Tina did a great job of kind of talking about that foundation that you build during your first 2 years. And she gave a really great example of a student who's interested in going on to medical school afterwards. And of course, being a physician means you're not just treating kind of symptoms, you're treating patients. So it's going to be really important to understand how kind of access to health, kind of the economic kind of structure, maybe city infrastructure impacting students' health. And that's really where you're getting to go deep. And so research, like we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, is really encouraged, and it's a really big part and an important part of the education at a liberal arts college. You'll be doing, because we are undergraduate focused, the 4 of us do not have any master's or PhD students. If we do, it's very, very just a handful, if that. And so that means your professors who are at the top of their field are still academics. There's still people who are looking to be published in kind of journals and publications. And so they're looking at our undergrads to help them in their labs. So we talk about this mentorship that gets to be developed. The small classes where you get to know everyone and engage deeply with your learning. You're going to see that as well, kind of in the next example on this next page. So I want to talk a little bit about Sally, who grew up in Shanghai, but she went to San Francisco for high school. And so when she applied to Oxy, she said that she was interested in biology or psychology. And this is going to be the same for all liberal arts colleges as well. You won't be required to declare your major before you come in. So she wrote that she was interested in bio and psych. And I think often students have an idea of what a major looks like. And it's only until you have kind of that ability to explore that you finally get to experience all these different classes that you haven't had a chance to take yet. So she found that cognitive science was something that she was really actually interested in and combined her interest in biology and psychology quite well. But her professor in one of her first classes at Oxy actually plucked her from class and said, "Hey, Sally, I noticed that you have a keen interest in this subject. I noticed that this is something that you're really interested in. I'd love for you to come and do kind of research in my lab." So she spent the next 3 years working with the same professor, kind of working in cognitive science for us is understanding how the brain interprets different stimuli. And so her specialty was looking at eye movement and eye tracking. And so her professor would put up, in their studies, would put up images, and Sally's job would be to run the technology that would see what people are initially drawn to first, and then how long they spend on that, kind of focusing on that, and what else they're looking at. And so that was what she did, and was, she was doing a great amount of work in that area. Her professor, in our small class sizes, small community, was talking to another professor about how helpful Sally was in the lab. And that a different professor actually brought her in to do an EEG study, which is when you hook up the brain to different kind of like electro pathways things. It's one of those, something much more complex that I don't have a full understanding of. But and then Sally had an opportunity to research with another professor, and she was able to convert these two research experiences into her own independent research project. Again, this is, for the first 3 years of her education, she was working alongside a professor. Her final year, she was able to develop this intentional project that she herself was really passionate about. She went to the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and she was working alongside a medical student who is in the process of completing their PhD, to assess how normal kind of people with with hearing, hard of hearing, interpret sounds differently than people with kind of traditional learning or traditional hearing habits. And so certainly that was a need that she saw. She said that all of the research so far didn't focus on hard of hearing communities. It focused only on people who had their full hearing abilities. And she said, this is a need. I'm going to take an intellectual risk. I'm going to be brave and kind of take a jump into the research community where she was the pioneer of this research, and this type of kind of intellectual risk, this type of kind of mentorship, this story of ability to do kind of in-depth research is going to be very consistent across liberal arts colleges, and it sets you up quite well for what you'll do after your graduation, which is what Kat is going to go ahead and talk about.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks, Michelle, and thanks to all of my colleagues. I think in a lot of ways, they've set me up to be able to show how our students who then graduate from our institutions are able to be successful in a wide variety of fields and industries. We've talked a lot about sort of 3 types of educational experiences. So we've talked about this value of a liberal arts college, right? Learning how to think critically and analyze thoroughly and communicate effectively. We've all touched upon the importance of finding your voice as a scholar, and the opportunities to do research that put you at the top of your field academically. And then we've also talked about this importance of ethical leadership, of recognizing that the decisions you make have meaning and value well beyond sort of you, right? And these values of being brave and being empathetic and thinking about your place in the world allow alums from all of our liberal arts colleges to go out and to be highly employable and highly successful. We think so much about the importance of relationships, and we've highlighted some of the ways in which those relationships really play out over the course of your 4 years on our campus. But what I think is really fantastic is that these relationships are not just important to you for those 4 years of your life. These are people who are going to be important to you for the rest of your life as well. I think a lot about the value of your faculty relationships. We all have very small class sizes. Faculty are choosing to invest in working with undergraduate students. They could have jobs at large research universities, and they have chosen to be at our institutions because of the ways in which they're able to support our undergraduates. That's really important. If you're applying to graduate school, you have faculty members who are world-renowned, who are supporting you in those application processes. And at each of our institutions, within 5 years of graduation, about 70% or more of our alumni will go on to graduate school. And those are some of the top graduate schools across the United States, but across the globe as well. I was in a conversation with a faculty member recently, and she said, when a student shares a goal with me, that goal then becomes my goal. And I think that is the kind of dedication of faculty across our 4 institutions. They're also at our institutions for the relationships that they're able to build. When we think about relationships also and how those relationships become very valuable resources, think so much about our centers for career and professional advising. They might have slightly different names depending on which institution you look at, but we each have staff members who are, as Tina mentioned earlier, really committed to helping you find your way in the world, who are excited to empower you and lift you up, to connect with hundreds of employers who come to our campus and tens of thousands of alumni from our institutions who are, again, at the top of their field across various fields and industries and across the globe as well. So while you're choosing to be brave, to take maybe a slightly different pathway from going to a larger university, there are a lot of people cheering you on and supporting you as you continue to sort of discover your own voice and find the ways in which you hope to shape and change the world around you. And we think this sort of liberal arts education allows you to be deeply successful in this. Perhaps this moment in history and global history is all the more appropriate to think about why you're not just going to be trained in one discipline, in one way of problem solving. Instead, we think it's vital for our students and alums to think about the ways in which working collaboratively and looking at problems and issues from many different vantage points, from many different lenses, will allow creative and innovative ideas to, again, shape and change our world for the better. There's a study out that shows that students who are in high school currently will have 5 or 6 different careers over the course of their working life, not jobs, right? Careers. And 2 of those have not even yet been established. So we're not in the business of trying to predict the future. Instead, we're interested in creating an education where you are not defined by your major when you're at our institutions, and you are not limited by your major when you're going out into the field and you're joining companies and organizations across the world. Within 6 months of graduation at all 4 of our institutions, well over 90% of students are either fully employed in graduate school or doing a year-long fellowship. The vast majority of those students are fully employed and are really thriving in the positions that they've come across. And what I love about talking about life after a liberal arts college is that there is not just one path, right? There are many. And so that can be a little bit scary to think, okay, there's not sort of a defined route from point A to point B. But we think this allows you not just to live a successful life, but to really live a happy life where you're able to be the best version of yourself. And so I want to take a minute and sort of ask you a question. So close your eyes if you're comfortable and think, okay, what is the largest field or industry that a graduate from a liberal arts college may go into? All right, do you mind switching to the next slide? So I wish we were in person for many reasons, but one of the reasons is because I bet no one thought business and finance, right? Not one of our institutions has a business or finance major. And while this information is for Haverford specifically, this type of information is very similar across our 4 institutions. And the idea that you can be successful in business without being a business major is very well established here in the United States. But certainly it's something that we know is not as sort of common in other parts of the world. I have 2 examples, though, to really highlight the ways in which our institutions allow our alumni to be successful in these careers and pathways that maybe don't connect immediately back to their major. So my first example is a person named Michael Kim. He is from Seoul. He came to Haverford and graduated in the mid 1980s. He was an English major at Haverford. He loved the idea of studying narratives and thinking about different stories and the ways in which those shape and inform cultures. After he graduated from Haverford with his English major, he went on to get his MBA from Harvard Business School. And then came back to Seoul. And in Seoul, he has created the largest private equity firm in Asia. So for the students out there who have parents who ask them what they might do with an English degree, you can tell them that you can start the largest private equity firm in Asia, right? What I love about Michael, though, and what I think really brings home this idea of the value of a liberal arts college at each of our institutions is that Michael is not just interested in business and finance. Last month, he actually published his first novel, right? He's thinking about the ways in which his liberal arts education has allowed him to contribute to conversations across fields and across industries. Thinking about sort of Michael's example, it might be hard for the students who are joining us today to think about your life 35 years from when you graduate from college, right? And fair enough. So I have another example of a Haverford senior. His name is David. He is from Shanghai, and at Haverford, he is majoring in economics and philosophy. And his senior thesis is asking about socially responsible investment practices. So, can businesses do well while doing good? He actually connected with several alumni in business and finance through our Center for Career and Professional Advising. And he is really excited to be starting a job at a middle market investment firm where he'll continue to think about these questions of what does it look like to invest in socially responsible businesses and organizations. And so we know, again, there's a lot of uncertainty in our world. There are a lot of questions right now that we don't know the answer to. But what we do know is that the value and strength and power of resources and relationships on all of our campuses will set you up to be successful in many different careers and industries, and also allow you to think about your place in the world. And what I hope is clear is each of us feels really strongly about the value of a liberal arts education, the power of a liberal arts education, because we are all liberal arts college graduates ourselves. None of us majored in college admission, of course, right? But this is a field that we love because of the strength of relationships as well. And so with that, I just want to take a moment again to thank Initial View, our hosts, for having us, for providing this platform, for being so wonderful at creating opportunities for these kinds of conversations. And speaking of conversation, really excited to turn it over and hear what questions you have and how we can continue to be a resource for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, everyone. So this is a time for questions. So please use the Q&A box to ask your questions. So I'm going to go ahead and first throw out the first question that's already been here. So during the talk, we learned that that especially in a liberal arts college, that there is a way to make sure that your interests beyond the classroom can be well integrated in life. So if anyone, if someone could speak to particularly how in a liberal arts college, one could pursue their musical interests or their athletic interests in a way that is unique to a liberal arts college.
Sure, I'm happy to take that one. So I think the important thing at all of our institutions is that you don't have to be a major to be able to participate in, to take classes in that area or to participate in activities within that area. So specifically with regard to music, at all of our institutions, our orchestra, our jazz bands, all of those smaller chamber groups are not full just of music majors. They have biological chemistry majors and philosophy majors and English majors in sort of really participating very, very fully. And so provided that you're willing to make the time for some of those extracurricular commitments, you're going to be able to participate. And this is true certainly of athletics. Not while everyone won't be a varsity athlete, if being sort of active in a sport is important to you, there are going to be opportunities for you to do that. And I think at all of our institutions, your interest and your commitment is more important than how any particular activity connects to your major or your professional interest. We want to encourage students to pursue all of the activities that they believe are enriching, regardless of whether or not it's going to get you an internship or a job.
Great, thank you. So we talked a lot about courage and empathy and how these are key components of a liberal arts college education. Could you speak more to what type of student in particular would thrive in a liberal arts college campus?
I can take a stab at it. Feel free to jump in, anybody. I think the answer to that is that there are so many types of students who thrive at a liberal arts college campus, that it's really hard to define a type, right? But I think that there are some common values that people share when they are really fully engaged in that experience. So people on our campuses, first and foremost, love to learn, right? And not to learn for the sake of a grade, not to learn to be competitive with other people, but to learn because the process of learning is interesting, right? And they want to learn not just from a professor in a classroom, but from their peers in the classroom and outside the classroom. So that true, like, honest engagement with subject matter, with people, being able to ask questions, that sense of curiosity about the world around them, that's a really common value across a liberal arts college student. And that will really help you thrive on campus. Another value is being really open-minded, right? You're going to meet people who are very different from you are, and that's very intentional. All of us have very intentional rooming processes, right? And meeting your first year roommates is going to be a really exciting thing. But you're probably not going to be in a room with someone from Korea. You might be in a room with someone from California and someone from Kansas and someone from Florida. And they're not going to look or think exactly like you do. And that is the joy of being a part of a really diverse community, is that you get to be really open-minded and think about the world from all these different perspectives. So being curious, being open-minded, being thoughtful and intellectual. But I would, and then the one thing that I would add to all of that is that it's really important to be collaborative. These are campuses where working together is far more valued than fighting each other, right? It's not a place where you're going to think about whether your 97.5 beats somebody else's 97. It's not about being competitive with each other. It's about taking all of those moments that you share in a classroom, that you share outside of classroom, and building on them together to make the world around you thrive because of it, to answer big questions. Because we can see today, right, with COVID-19, that it isn't just doctors solving a problem, it's scientific researchers, it's people working in government. It has an effect on climate, right? So climate scientists are involved. There's so many ways that COVID-19 is bringing people with all these different interests together, and you have to be able to work together to solve a really big problem. And those moments are ubiquitous. They are everywhere on a liberal arts college campus. They're much smaller. We're not solving COVID-19 at Bowdoin College today, right? But there are people from Bowdoin and Haverford and Grinnell and Oxy who are working together across the globe to think about different aspects of that problem. And so being collaborative is probably one of the most important pieces that I can talk about in terms of people who thrive on a liberal arts college campus. Feel free to add or jump in if you guys have anything else that I missed, but I think those are values that are really helpful to come to college with.
Great. So there are a few questions about the size of a class at a liberal arts college. So if someone could speak to that, and also could maybe connect that with another question in regards to how that impacts one's relationship with a professor, because it was talked about in the presentation how you have a unique opportunity to interact more with professors on a liberal arts college. So maybe if we could, someone can address those two issues and how they obviously interconnect, but if you could flesh that out a little bit.
I'll go ahead and take that. Sorry, Kat, I noticed that you turn off their mic as well. So certainly liberal arts colleges are designed to have these intimate class experiences. I think for all of us, our averages range from like 12 to 19, I think is where we all kind of fall between, with our largest class still being very small. We at Occidental often talk about the other educational experiences that exist in Los Angeles. And there are some schools in LA where the intro level classes are hundreds of students, and that is not the case at any liberal arts college that you're going to find. And And at least for me, the reason why I wanted to take this question is because I think another reason why students who are drawn to liberal arts colleges also tend to be those who are interested in being engaged in their education. I went to a large public high school where it was predominantly Asian Americans, and we were very much expected to trust everything that the teacher said, and the teacher never really looked for input from us. And so the first time I stepped into a classroom at a liberal arts college campus and the professor was like, "What do you think?" I was like, "Oh my goodness, like you actually want to hear what I have to say, and you're actually going to value what I have to say." And that is going to be typically a very stark contrast to where some students are growing up in education systems that some students are growing up in. And so your professors are really there to know you, to kind of provide this mentorship, to know you outside of the classroom. Because like we've all mentioned, our professors have an opportunity to work at other schools, but they've chosen specifically to work at places that cultivate undergraduates. And that's going to be a really important part of your educational experience.
Did you want to say something too, Kathleen? No, okay, good. Okay, there are questions about the community. So outside of academics, what do students do for fun? Dormitory, cafeteria, other things?
Absolutely. That is such an important question, right? We've spent a lot of time talking about the academic experiences and relationships and resources on our campuses, but these are all places where students love to live and learn, right? And so there is a ton happening and going on across our campuses. Each of our campuses have hundreds of clubs and organizations, probably nearly, if not over 1,000 events every year. And so these are places where your life in the classroom is vibrant and exciting, and your life outside the classroom is equally vibrant and exciting as well. And what I think is really special to highlight about the sort of vibrancy of life outside the classroom at a liberal arts college is the opportunity, as we talked about earlier, to take risks, right? You don't have to be a theater major to audition for that theater production. You don't have to be a music major to be in our orchestra. You can try out for a dance team or dance competition, never having done dance before. It also means that it's students who are deciding what is happening during the weekends on our campus. It's students who are coming together and saying, wouldn't it be cool if, and having the resources and the support on campus to see that through. And so when our students are sort of charting out what their weekends look like, so frequently it's going to this event to support this friend, or you're really excited because, one of your good friends worked so hard to bring this documentary filmmaker to campus, or your other friend is putting on this public policy consortium panel that you're excited to support. So it becomes about the opportunity to step outside your comfort zone and engage in really exciting ways, but to also support your friends and your peers in the work that they're doing to add to conversations outside the classroom as well. And you're right, dorm life is an important part of that too. We have highly residential campuses, and they're places a lot of people call home. Professors live on our campuses, some staff might live on campuses. And so again, there's a lot of intentionality in thinking about not just shaping a class, but really building a community of students, staff members, and faculty as well.
Great, thank you. There have been some questions about majors and liberal arts colleges. So I think just we can speak more broadly. If someone wants to major in political science, or someone wants to major in engineering, how does that experience maybe differ on a liberal arts college versus like maybe a big public school? And also, if you could speak to how one could potentially take other courses that's not related to your major, and how easy is it to switch majors in between?
I can try to tackle that. Hopefully I'll cover all of it. So I would say that the way that any major at a liberal arts college is different than a larger institution is There are a few aspects. So one has to do with our size, right, which we've spoken about a lot over the course of the time that we've shared together. So some of it is that because of our size, any major is different because all of the resources of that department are for our undergraduate students only, right? There are no graduate students who have most of the attention of our faculty. Our faculty are deeply committed to the classroom experience of all of our students. And that means different things, right? So it means that in an introductory level class, it's not 200 students taking an introduction to political science. It's still maybe 20 students getting an introduction to political science, which means even your introduction is already deeper because you're going to spend more time talking through the reading, getting a strong foundation in that particular discipline. It also means that research opportunities, again, are there for undergraduates, not for graduate students, because we don't have graduate students. And I think too that the way that a student engages with their major is different at a liberal arts college because of the very individual attention each student is getting from their professors, right? So when you have a question, that's not a question you keep to yourself, right? It's a question that you go and sit with your professor when they have their office hours, and you go and you sit with them for 20 minutes to talk through your question or what you didn't understand. It also means, I think, that the nature of how our students learn is so collaborative inside the classroom and outside of the classroom as well. So there's that. I also think, and so this I think was part of the question as well, was sort of how do you choose a major? How do you take other classes outside of your major? So I think at all of our institutions, this might be slightly different, but probably it works out to be pretty similar. So at Grinnell, your major will take up, to fulfill the requirements of your major, maybe 30% of your total course time, right? So 70% of your classes are classes outside of your major. At Grinnell, you choose what those are, right? At our institutions, you get a fair amount of flexibility in how you choose to take other things. So they might be classes that sort of complement your particular area of interest, or they might just be a particular interest you have in that moment. You just want to take that class. You don't have to declare a major before you've started, right? At all of our institutions, you have 2 full years to try so many different things before you have to declare a major. And let's see, what was that? Oh, so you can, certainly students can switch majors, but of course you want to be really, you want to be thoughtful, I think, about the major you choose. Again, you have 2 years before you have to choose. So it makes sense to be thoughtful about that choice, because certainly depending on when you change your mind, it's pretty hard to change your major halfway through your senior year. It is certainly possible. What I think many of us probably see more often than a change of major is the adding of a second major. So it's really common, and this happens, I think, at all of our institutions. You'll declare your biology major at the end of your second year, and you'll be plugging along with your biology requirements, and then you'll realize that, wait, you've basically fulfilled the requirements for a Spanish major without even realizing it, because you like Spanish so much. So then you'll just declare a second major. And I think that is much more common than a student, in their third year, all of a sudden realizing, wait, I've been doing the wrong thing. I think that rarely happens.
Great, thank you, Tina. Do you think we have time for maybe one more question? And this is an excellent question that that pertains to any international student, wherever you come from. So the question is, what ways do your colleges support students coming from abroad once they arrive on campus? So if you want, you can take turns to talk specifically how each of your campuses deal with this. And maybe if you have any last remarks, and then we can make this our last question.
Go ahead, Kat.
Okay. Well, I'm really glad that you asked this question, so thank you. I think we are all really excited to build global communities on our campus, right? I hope it's clear. Michelle is, up at 4 a.m. in Los Angeles right now because we're excited to have the opportunity to engage with you. And we also think that our communities are places where you maybe could really thrive also. So these are places that we've talked a lot about, this idea of building intentional communities. Ryan talked about that in terms of how we read your applications. And we've talked a lot about the value of relationships and resources too. And that really plays out in terms of your experience as an international student or a student who's lived most of their life outside of the United States, then choosing to come to one of our colleges in the United States. We all have opportunities for international students to have an orientation. Those are usually before the entire college orientation. So it's a great way to get over some jet lag. You get to sort of, spend some time on our campuses and explore to build community within the larger international student community. And then also have opportunities to make connections through our own orientation programs for all of our first year students. So you don't feel sort of pigeonholed into one specific community. There are offices on campus, international student support offices, folks in our centers for career and professional advising who are all trained in supporting international students and the opportunities and challenges that sort of brings with you. So I hope it's clear that we're interested in having these conversations and sort of being resources for you, because we believe in the ways in which our campus communities will support students who choose to call our campuses home.
Ryan, go for it.
Oh, the only thing I would add is the other thing to look for, I think, are host family programs. That's a really wonderful support opportunity, support network that colleges often offer, not just international students, but students who are coming from far away, right? Maine is very far away from California. And I think the importance of having, we've talked about these places being residential and becoming your home, right? But there are lots of times where you actually want a home, and these families agreed to host students because they want to invite you into their family, right? So our campus becomes a home, but you also have a host mom and a host dad and a host dog, and you can spend holidays there. You could do your laundry there. They can pick you up from the airport. And I would just say, I think this is probably true of my colleagues too, but we have a bunch of students who, when COVID-19 broke out and our campuses shut down, couldn't go home, right? And they are living with their host families right now. And so it's one of many ways that our communities really come together to support students, because you are not coming here for a transaction, right? You are coming here to start a path of start your path on an amazing life in front of you. And it is about being a part of a community and being known. You will not be anonymous, and you cannot fall through the cracks at any of our schools. And that's a really important thing to know, that you matter as a person and you will be looked out for as a person. And I think that that's a really great note to sort of take away from all of this, that you matter, and you matter to us now, and you matter to us when you're a student, and you matter to us when you graduate, and you will never be allowed to just slip through at any of our institutions.
Great. Thank you so much. I am aware of the fact that we are a little bit over the time, but just by a little bit. So I think we can, this would be a great wrapping point here. I just turned on a slide where you can see all of our contact information. So please feel free to contact each and every one of us. We want to continue the conversation. As our admissions officers said, they are here for you. They have woken up really early in the morning where they are, because they want to take this time to just meet with you. And this is the best that we can do in times like this. So many thanks to Tina from Grinnell, Ryan from Bowdoin, Kathleen from Haverford, and Michelle from Occidental. Many thanks to all of you, and for waking up.
And just before we all go, just a really big thank you to Initial View and to Jungrak for hosting us and for moderating. We couldn't do this without you, and we're so appreciative of everything that you do and everything that you offer us. So thank you to Initial View and Jungrak.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so for students and parents, please join us again. Next Tuesday, we'll be here again at the same time, and this time we'll be with Georgia Tech, University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, and the University of Virginia. 오늘 참석해 주셔서 너무 감사하고요. 다음 주에는 조지아 텍이랑 일리노이 대학교랑 버지니아 대학교 사장관들이랑 여러분들과 이 자리에 같이 만나겠습니다. 감사합니다. Thank you. Bye everyone. We'll stick around for a few more minutes, but please feel free to hop off.